All right, we'll go ahead and call this Board of Zoning Appeals meeting to order. Today is Monday, February 11th, 2019. It is now 6:30 p.m. If you'd all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Ask Ms. Paxton to call the roll.
Bruce Ashcraft.
Present.
Alan Howe.
Here.
Chadwick Hitchrick.
Here.
Rob Platt.
Here.
T.J. Rotoback. Here.
I have 5 members present. We have a quorum. We will proceed first before we get into our agenda items. There are a lot of you here this evening, perhaps the biggest attendance at a BZA meeting we've had, at least at my time on this board, so welcome all. I'm sure you're not here to see any of us, so I'm going to go over a few rules of how we run these meetings. Some of you may have not been here before. Maybe you're not familiar with how the Board of Zoning Appeals works. This is not a zoning board. This is a zoning appeals board. So we hear appeals from what the city's zoning code says. So what comes before this board has to be evidence, has to be testimony, has to be factual. This board cannot consider opinions, problems with your neighbor, dog leaving things in your yard. Has nothing to do with this board. So just so we're all aware, when you come to speak, everybody's welcome to. You will be sworn in. Evidence and testimony you present will be on the record, and it will be recorded. And also, I want to be clear that all conversation and questions comes to this board. You don't turn around and talk to members in the audience. Everything runs through this board. That's how we run it. That same thing with the staff. Everything gets addressed through us. We will make sure that your questions are answered. I would also say that in the interest of a perhaps overfull room of people, if you are simply getting up to say the same thing that somebody has already said, please feel free to just stand and say that. If you don't have anything additional to add, if you just want your name and address to be added to the record and simply that you are in support of something that was already said, feel free to do that also. So this board will hear the applications that were submitted. We will hear all evidence and testimony. A decision may or may not be rendered this evening. Usually we try to address agenda items the same night. If there are a lot of information, we have in the past tabled items to the next meeting if we need to do so. So that being said, we will proceed with the meeting. So first on our agenda, we have 4A under old business. We have a conditional use application CU-18-005. This was originally submitted to this board in September of last year. The applicant has asked for it to remain tabled. I see a note that the applicant intends to come back to this board on March 11. It'd be next month's hearing, so I'll ask staff, is there anything new on this, or do we just wish to continue this as tabled?
Continue for this to be tabled.
Thank you. We will do so. We will move on to new business. We have under new business, letter A, variance application VA-19-001. I would ask staff to give their report, please.
Thanks, sir. The applicant owner is Tariq Alhizi. The location is 25 West Avenue, and then there's 4 lots directly north of this that are also involved in the variance. But it's almost a half acre in size, all totaled. It's zoned R20, and the request is approval of variance from section 129110 of the Pataskala Code to allow for 3 commercial vehicles exceeding the maximum commercial weight to be parked on a residentially zoned lot. So an overview of the area map. The Broad Street is down in the right-hand corner. Adams Lane to the south, and then we have east, west, and Connors. The properties in question are outlined in yellow. So the property at 25 West Avenue is 0.42 acres and contains two structures, a 1,500 square foot single-family home and a small shed of unknown size. The four adjacent parcels I mentioned to the north are 0.1 acres each, and they contain a gravel lot and two additional sheds of unknown size. Here's the property in question outlined as a whole. So the proposal is the applicant is requesting approval of a variance to allow for 3 trucks that exceed the maximum commercial vehicle weight to be located on a residentially zoned property. So as proposed, it would be 2 26-foot box trucks and 1 16-foot box truck. And here are a picture of the box trucks located on the property currently. So, based on the proposal, section 1291.10.1 states that no commercial vehicle weighing over 6,500 pounds can be stored, parked, or allowed on a residentially zoned lot. Vehicles 600 or 6,500 pounds or less can be parked on a residentially zoned lot, but they're limited to 1, and it cannot detract from the residential character of the neighborhood. So the applicant's narrative indicated that he was unaware of the zoning regulations before purchasing the property. He cited the presence of other commercial vehicles and small businesses nearby that led him to believe this was permitted. The applicant states that his intention is to clean up the property and turn the home into a residential rental property. So this application originally came to the Planning and Zoning Department's attention following a complaint from a resident in the area. They said that there were lights on the property that were shining into their windows and that there were the 3 moving trucks on the property. The applicant informed the zoning inspector when he stopped out that the previous owner of the property had stated that he was permitted to park commercial vehicles on the property. The applicant also mentions this in the narrative. I did want to point out that the Planning and Zoning Department cited the previous owner twice in 2018 for having commercial vehicles on the property. Staff then informed the applicant that his options would be to pursue the variance he's pursuing this evening, apply to rezone the property, or apply for a use variance to allow the trucks to be parked on the property. So there was some mention of other existing code violations in the area. The Planning and Zoning Department is well aware of that. These are for the other commercial vehicles and non-permitted businesses. Last year, the Planning and Zoning Department issued 40 violations on 14 different properties in the area, 5 of which were for commercial vehicles. The applicant stated in the narrative that the existing home will remain residential in use. However, currently 25 West Avenue is listed as the business address. So based upon the code and the NEICS classification system, a moving business would be under 484210. So if we look for uses in 484210, those are not permitted in the R20 zoning district. So having a business of this type at this location is not permitted by the zoning code. Currently, only light manufacturing and plain manufacturing allow for this type of use. The applicant would be unable to apply for a home occupation for this property as he does not reside there, and there's also the limitation of 1 commercial vehicle over 6,500 pounds. We did send this out for comment from other departments and agencies and received no feedback. We did receive a resident letter today. It's on your dais. It's signed by 2 residents in the area who are opposed to the variance. They say that they are opposed because it's a residential neighborhood and do not want to see a business there. Surrounding properties are all zoned R20 and all contain single-family homes. Findings of fact and potential conditions should the board choose to approve the variance request. 1, the applicant shall obtain all necessary permits from the City of Pataskville and Licking County Building Department within 1 year of the date of approval. The applicant shall not operate an office on the premises without required approvals. The applicant shall not expand the gravel lot beyond its current dimensions. And then due to the issue with the lights previously, we added a 4th possible condition that the applicant shall ensure that the lights do not interfere with the neighboring properties. And I would be happy to answer any questions.
Scott, I think you covered this, but just for clarity, the applicant is Tarek Alisay.
Yes.
The zoning letters are addressed to Ms. Gardner, so we're assuming that was the previous,
That's correct.
okay? And then could you go back to an aerial? Okay. Okay, so that I'm clear, this variance is for the parking of vehicles as opposed to, if it's not zoned correctly and they don't have a conditional use, or I'm sorry, a home occupation avenue, they've not even looked at a use variance.
No, we've presented them with options, they chose to do a variance.
Okay. Okay, questions from the board for staff on their presentation? Okay, so I have, one speaker request form that I'm certain is for this one, there's a couple that I'm not certain, so we'll get to those. I have an speaker request form from Tanya Alisay. Are you here? Okay, would you like to come up? Do you have additional evidence or testimony for this board? If you do, I'm gonna ask you to turn and be sworn in. Give your name and address for the record, please.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony about the gift is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Tanya, he's at 25 West Avenue.
Okay.
I'm Tariq's wife, he's overseeing this right now.
Okay,
I know that there's not a variance for a moving company in the city, because I already had it before, and I've worked with the coding department before. And the city of Lincoln and Edna, it has grown so big that they don't have codes for the new businesses that are coming. But when we bought this home, it's a rental property, and we're still fixing the property up. And it was our understanding with the person that we have a lease with, that we could park our things there. But we're not trying to just, regard the community, because if you run through the community, you can see that we spent like over $6,000 trying to clean trash up from there. We're gonna plant flowers there. It's not anything that we're trying to, but we don't have a place to put them. Because we bought them, just sit them there, and we have somebody who's renting. But like I said, we're still working on the kitchen, we're still working on things for the person to move in. Now, as it is, I have moved the office to a home office, and we just pick the vehicles up there. As far as the lighting, they're regular lighting, and when we moved onto the street, it's dark, like it's black. And if someone would have knocked on the door, like everyone's really nice in the neighborhood, I'll be honest with you. But if they would have knocked on the door and said, "Hey, take down the security light," it would be no problem for me to do it. Just like it's no problem for me to pick the trash up or pick trash up on the ground or anything like that. I don't know what to say about the variances for the parking. We asked to rezone it, they said no, but there's 2 churches on there, a junkyard on the street, there's people with shingles off, there's a house, I'm just talking about the area. And we just thought it was an opportunity to fix it up and have a nice place for someone to live. And if you look at our, I think our title, when we got it, was for rental property. And that's what it is. We're still fixing it up. We've only had it a month and someone called. I don't know, it already had gravel down, it has enough gravel to accommodate what's there. But if you give us time, we'll make it so you won't even see them. Because we have to make them all more partial to even do anything with the lot. And we're still cleaning trash up from the lot. Like we haven't even had it a month before somebody calls. There's shingles all over the houses. There's, people do small businesses and there's trash and vacant homes behind us. And, there's a lot of stuff going on. But we proceed behind that and we try to work around it. So I'm hoping that I can get the variance for the trucks and, at least till I can get a place to put them. I mean, we spent our money on this property, and I know that the area is growing, and I don't, you know, when I spoke to the board, you do have to, you know, like accommodate for different things because they're old. You know, like there's no moving company, but you have manufacturing companies, but we don't have a moving company, they were just putting our trucks there.
So you do have a moving company,
Yeah,
but the home office is in a different
in
town.
Granville,
It's in Granville.
we're just parking the trucks there, we're fixing the house up. We're
Okay.
still working on the kitchen,
Right,
and we
right.
have a leasing person
That's
there.
fine. We're just talking about the commercial vehicle. It's
Mhm.
exceeding what the zoning states at this
Yeah.
time. So
And,
that's
and
what
I'll
I'm
be honest
asking.
with you, there's like numerous people who have box trucks, there's numerous people who have semis, but I don't wanna affect their businesses, you know, I'm not trying to affect anybody. I'm just trying to, you know, do what I have to do and bring tax dollars and clean my property up. I'm not trying to, you know, do anything illegal. Like I said, we paid for, you know, to clean the gravel up, we had big piles of gravel.
Do you know how much the vehicles weigh? Are
They're
they
only
dual?
the 26-foot trucks,
They're 26 and,
the U-Haul, they're actually U-Haul and Penske trucks, and we only have one 16-foot truck. Yeah, so, it's not like,
so it says you had two 26-foot
yeah, they're actually, Penske
and
and
one 6-foot truck.
one 16-foot truck.
16, I'm sorry, thank you.
No, that's fine.
Anybody know approximately?
And we have a rental, but we have to finish fixing the kitchen up and,
Is there anything in here that says how much the current vehicles on the property weigh?
The
I think they're 10,000.
The zoning inspector did a comparison and said that, if you look at a U-Haul truck, a 15-foot box truck from U-Haul has a gross vehicle weight of 14,500 pounds.
But the gravel that's already down there can accommodate it. That's already been down there. The weight.
Right, but we're looking at what the zoning says versus, and we appreciate the improvements, but we just need to talk about the zoning.
Yeah, I understand.
Any other questions?
No.
Okay. I don't have any questions for you at this point. We might, depending on if there's other people to speak on it. I don't know yet. So thank
And you
you.
know, I mean, I don't, you know, like I said, we didn't really know. We were just excited to get, you know, a place and we didn't really know
Mhm.
and we was unaware. And, thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
I have a couple speaker request forms that didn't mark what application they're here from, so to make sure, I have a Henry householder. Are you here for this application?
No.
Okay. And Katrina Self.
I'm here for the Watkins.
Okay. Is there anyone else in attendance that is here to speak to this application specifically? Okay. Ms. Alice Scott said she talked to a board. Is this gone before the zoning board, or do I need to clarify who she's talked to?
I imagine
She talked to
spoke
somebody
with-
about a rezoning, she said.
I think she spoke with Jack, and we presented the different options. He would look at the future land use map recommendations, which show it to remain as residentially zoned, so the planning and zoning department wouldn't say you can't do that. We can just say the likelihood of that being rezoned commercial isn't very good. But we do leave that up to the applicant to decide how they would like to proceed.
And the former rental use was a rental as a residence, I assume,
Correct.
as opposed to a business, okay. And I know the city's in the middle of comp plan revision. Has there been any discussion or any maybe draft version of a map that would indicate there'd be a change from residential in this area, or do you anticipate, I realize it's not finalized, but anticipate it remains the same?
Based upon the draft we have currently, it would remain residential.
Okay. So if this board approved a parking variance, they'd still have to come back for a use variance, is that correct?
If it were to remain a residential rental property, they would not.
Okay,
But the business address, if you go on Google Maps now, it has the business located there.
okay, I understand. Okay, you have something else? If you come up, if you wish to.
Actually, it's changed to the, Granville address,
What has changed?
the, Google Maps, because when we were moving it, we had to have someplace to put the mail, and then we had switched it back to the Granville address. So if you look now, it's under the Granville, because we didn't know what we were gonna do, because we have a PO box in Columbus, and we have, a Granville address, and we were in Pataskla before.
Mhm.
So if you look now, it's back on the Granville, that's where the home office is.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, are there any other questions from the board? Questions from staff, additional information from staff?
No, sir.
Any other evidence, testimony, anyone here wish to speak? All right. So we will go ahead and close the evidence and testimony part of this hearing. This board, per the city zoning code, has a number of factors called findings of fact that we must consider for each application that comes before us. So if you'll bear with us, we'll run through these. Board will discuss them, and we'll see where we head from there. So pursuant to section 1211.07A1 of the code, we will run through A through K. Letter A, for this application, whether the property in question will yield a reasonable return, or if there can be a beneficial use of the property.
Yes.
Yes.
The majority saying yes. Letter B, whether there are unique physical circumstances or conditions that prohibit the property being developed in strict conformity with the zoning regulations such that a variance is necessary to enable a reasonable use of the property.
No.
No.
The majority saying no. Letter C, whether the variance requested is substantial.
Yes.
Letter D, whether the essential character of the neighborhood would be substantially altered or the adjoining properties would suffer a substantial detriment as a result of the variance.
Yes.
Yes. Letter E, whether the variance, if granted, will substantially or permanently impair the appropriate use or development of adjacent property.
Yes.
No.
I don't see it impairing the other properties.
I think the area has been there a long time, and I believe it's by and large built. There were properties to the one side that were vacant. I don't know that it impairs it, though. I would have to say no. So can I get a vote on that again from the members? Yes or no?
Yes.
Bruce?
I said yes.
Okay, I got 2 yeses. No?
I can see the point of no.
Okay. So I have a majority of no for letter E. Letter F. Whether the variance, if granted, will be detrimental to the public welfare.
No.
Yes.
I've heard 3 no's and 1 yes. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the yes has it for F. Letter G, whether the variance, if granted, would adversely affect the delivery of governmental services.
No.
No.
Letter H, whether the property owner purchased the subject property with knowledge of the zoning restriction.
No.
Whether the property owner's predicament, this is letter I, whether the property owner's predicament can be obviated through some other method than the variance.
Yes.
Yes.
Letter J, whether the variance, if granted, will represent the minimum variance that will afford relief and represent the least modification possible of the requirement at issue.
No.
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 3 noes. Bruce, do you wish to weigh in?
I agree.
Okay. And finally, letter K, whether the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement would be observed and substantial justice done by granting the variance.
No.
No.
All right, so Ms. Paxton, for the record, we have yes for letters A, C, D, F, and I, no for the rest. All right, so those are the findings of fact. We've heard the testimony on it. As we discussed at the last meeting, any motion has to be in the affirmative, and then the board can vote yes or no on the motion to approve. Is everybody on board with that and understanding?
Yes.
Okay, so this board can either table this or take action tonight. What is the board's pleasure? For the sake of discussion, I will go ahead and move to approve variance from 1291.101 of the Pataskala Code for variance application, VA-19-001. That's my motion. Is there a second?
Second it?
A second by Ms. Rodeback. Is there discussion?
No.
I would simply say, I'm always leery to change uses of the property through a variance, especially through a conditional use variance, which I understand this is not, but when you open the door by allowing other variances for uses of the property, that opens a whole other can of worms for the staff. So, although I moved to approve simply to get it out there for action for this board tonight discussion, I do not believe I can support this application based on the testimony that was given, the information in the application that was submitted, and what we heard tonight from staff. So, that being said, we've had a motion, a second discussion. I ask for roll call, please.
Mr. Howe,
No.
Mr. Ashcraft,
No.
Mr. McKittrick,
No.
Ms. Rodeback,
No.
Mr. Platt.
No. So we have 5 no votes for the motion to approve, therefore the application has been denied. Ms. Alice, staff will get with you in the next couple of days on what your next steps are. You're welcome to stay for the rest of this hearing. There's a lot of people here. It'll probably be a long one, so I wouldn't be offended if you didn't stay. All right, we will move on to letter 5B on the agenda under new business. This is variance application VA-19-002 submitted by Mr. Jason Heitmeyer. Staff to give their report, please.
Thank you, sir. As you mentioned, the applicant is Jason Heitmeyer. The owner is Mid-Ohio Development Corporation. The location is the unimproved property on Watkins Road on the east side. It's almost 7 acres, 6.8 acres in size. It's zoned RM, multifamily residential district, and the request is approval of variance from section 123905 of the code to allow for a lot split that will fail to meet the required minimum lot width of the RM district. So an aerial shot of the area. The property in question is outlined in yellow. This is Watkins Road running north-south. You can see an orange line, that's the city boundary with Harrison Township. So to the north is Harrison Township, north of the orange line, and oddly enough, these parcels right here that's surrounded by the property in question. This is Jefferson Meadow condominiums, and this is Barrington Ridge across the street. So as I mentioned, the property is 6.8 acres in size. I mentioned the Jefferson Meadows, Barrington Ridge, and the 3 properties that are located in the middle of the property in question. So the property has 2 frontages, one to the north and one to the south of the 3 properties in the middle. The south frontage has 200 feet. The north frontage is 60.25, but does widen to 214.92 feet, about 490 feet off Watkins Road. So here's a zoomed in map of the property. So we have a frontage to the north that is a little over 60 feet. and the frontage to the south, that is 200 feet. So the applicant's proposal is to split the lot in two. The north lot would be 2.16 acres with that 60 feet of frontage. The south lot would be 4.285 acres with the 200 feet of frontage. So here's a rendering of what the proposed lot split would be. So approximately split along that line there. It's the applicant's intention to develop the south lot into a multifamily development. Since it is zoned multifamily residential, multifamily uses are permitted on that property. The property is within a quarter mile of Broad Street, therefore a transportation corridor overlay district application would need to be approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. The TCOD looks at parking, architecture, lighting, landscaping, etc. So that would be the next step if approved, dependent upon how this proceeds tonight, that would be the next step before construction can begin. So the minimum lot width for an area zoned RM is 90 feet. So the one to the north is short by a little under 30 feet, which is why we're here for the variance. Both minimum lot sizes, it's 1,300 or 13,000 square feet, excuse me. So both proposed lots would meet the minimum lot size. However, it's just the frontage to the north that would be about 30 feet short of what's required in the multifamily district. We did not receive any other comments from other departments and agencies. So surrounding properties, as I mentioned, Harrison Township, it's zoned agricultural and B1 business district. There's a dog kennel located there. To the east is zoned RM, multifamily residential. That's the condominium complex. To the south is general business, which is currently vacant. And to the west is a blend of the city of Pataskala and Harrison Township with agriculture and R7 village single-family residential that contains single-family homes. There's finding of facts and a possible supplementary condition that the board may consider. The applicant shall obtain all necessary permits from the city of Pataskala within 1 year of the date of approval. And I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Scott. So for clarification, the request from the applicant is simply for the frontage along Watkins Road. The parcel already exists with 60.25 feet. It's simply if they want to split it.
That's correct.
Okay, so by right now, the applicant could build on that, what is right now, I guess, considered the southern portion of that, what they're proposing to do.
That's correct.
The applicant obviously has some reason that they want to split off for the northern parcel.
The current lot and both lots are zoned for multifamily? It wouldn't
Correct.
change?
Correct. The entire property outlined in yellow is zoned multifamily, and if the split were to happen, it would remain multifamily.
Okay. And those three parcels there in the middle are still in Harrison?
Correct.
Is that what I heard you say?
Correct.
Okay. Are there any other questions for staff on their report?
This was not always compatible, this area.
No, I imagine over time that it was annexed, although when it was annexed to the city, I don't know.
Okay. Any other questions? I do not have a speaker request form for Mr. Heitmeyer, but I do know he's here. I'm sorry, I do have one. Mr. Heitmeyer, do you wish to come up and provide any additional evidence or testimony to this board or give any feedback to their report? If you do, please be sworn in and give your name and address for the record.
Do you swear affirm the testimony about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you have anything additional from their staff report or that you would like for this board to know?
Yes, please.
Okay.
My name is Jason Heitmeyer. My company is Heitmeyer Building and Design. I reside at 7010 Deer Run Road in Pickerington. And I have been a custom home builder and residential builder for 20-plus years. And many of the people who know me and my company over the past 20-plus years certainly know that I build a beautiful, high-end product. Granted, it's been condos, single-family condos, and residential custom homes for many years, as well as commercial buildings. But you know, this would fall into doing residential multifamily apartments on the higher end as far as what we're doing. The purpose of today is really to split the lot. It's not, I'm not here asking for a variance or anything different with the use of that property. That's totally, that's not the purpose of today. The intention with the northern half is I wanna split it out so that way I can sell that parcel to any of the neighbors adjoining it, if they would like to purchase it, just to add to their property, to any of the contiguous neighbors. Sell it on the open market for a single-family home, something or just a single residence. That is the intention with that. I cannot change the zoning, my understanding, I can't change the zoning of that northern parcel today, because it's still tied to the rest of the parcel, which I intend to develop as apartments. So therefore, that's, it's kinda like, I'm kinda stuck. I gotta split it off, even though it's still in that category, and then we can turn it into a single-family house, or just sell it to one of the neighbors, whoever wants to buy it, so. And then just, as far as the apartments, just a point of fact, again, they're, high-end apartments, that is planned for the area. I'm not asking for any zoning changes or variances or anything associated with that on that southern portion. The application's already been turned into the city with regard to such, just a matter of checking off the categories and lists associated with it. And it is not, I repeat, not Section 8 housing. So I don't know, supposedly there was a rumor floating around about that. I just wanna put that to rest, that, if you know the name Heitmeyer, you'll know that I build a nice product. And that's what's gonna go there, so, and it'll actually be named after my daughter as far as the name of the development, so. But again, we're not here for the development, we're here for the lot split, and that's the purpose of today. That's all I have.
Okay. Couple questions. First of all, you're aware that you gotta go to the TCOD for the
Correct.
planning and zoning, correct?
Yeah, it's already been
That's
submitted for the site.
Okay, and you're aware that by right, you could build on the whole parcel without the split, so if you chose, you could clear it and theoretically build more apartments if you wanted, instead of splitting one on.
Yeah, instead of splitting it, I could come back and put 60 units on instead of the 42. Correct. Yeah, I'm aware of that. I'm choosing to do something nice for the community.
Okay, are there any other questions for the applicant? Staff have any questions?
No, sir.
Mr. Heymeier, we may have more questions, but you
Sure.
can be seated right now. If you wish, and we'll call some other people, and might have you come back to answer questions. Thank you, sir. Scott, a question on if you, in this zoning district, if you split off and an adjacent property wants to purchase and merge, do they have to rezone, or can they just merge parcels?
They might have to rezone, because typically you can't have split zoning. Another issue may be if, let's say for example, that northernmost property in Harrison Township there, we couldn't merge properties across jurisdictional boundaries.
Okay. Okay, you can't have dual zoning on a property, you said?
You should not.
So the property realistically would have to de-annex from the city to merge with a Harrison Township parcel.
That
Should
is
they wish
correct,
to do
or
so.
vice versa.
Okay, all right. Other questions from the board? Okay. I have a number of request forms here to speak on this in no particular order other than how they were put on my table. We will go through them. except for the two that I wasn't sure on earlier. So Katrina Self, if you wish to give evidence, testimony, please feel free to come forward.
I don't have testimony, I just have a question, where does he wanna divide it?
Okay, so if you want to submit your question, you've got to come up. Be sworn in, give your name and address for the record.
My name is Katrina Self, I bought 210 Aston Court.
Okay, then you need to be sworn in before you
Raise
get
your
in.
hand, please. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Your question is, where's the split gonna be, and there's the site layout.
Okay.
So the northern acres are northern lot would be 2+ acres, I believe it was. Is that correct?
2.4.
And he wants to build on the southern part.
That was the testimony that was given, yes,
Okay.
with the intent of selling off the
And
northern.
then if he would split it off, that entrance there, is that wide enough for somebody to do a residential entrance? To build a house?
The northern parcel, you're asking?
Mm-hmm.
So that's 60 foot, I guess I'd look to Scott for that.
It would be wide enough if someone wanted to build a single-family home, they could do it with 60 feet.
And then would that be, if somebody wanted to buy that and put more apartments on it, or condos, is that wide enough to put something like that on it?
It may be a little bit tight to do that. I'm not saying it would be impossible, but it wouldn't have as much clearance as the 200 feet. Could be done, but it would be could be narrow through there getting the driveway in.
What's the right-of-way requirement for, would you, first of all, would you need a public road to go back to apartments, or would it be private?
You would not. You would need, an access drive is usually about 28 feet wide, so they can get it in there, but then the signage and the other improvements, it can get tight with 60 feet.
Okay.
And that is a very, very busy road, Watkins. People fly up and down that road.
Okay, do you have any other questions, testimony to present?
I know this does not, I know we are just talking about the split. Is there any way that, I know that me and a lot of other Barrington Ridge residents have come here for the simple fact that we don't want apartments across from us. We already have several companies that have come in and bought our houses in Barrington Ridge and are renting them out. And we need single family houses
Sure.
that are paying. I
Sure.
know that a lot of us are very, very concerned. Condos, you know, if they actually had condos that they were building there, that people were actually buying, we'd be a lot happier. But I know that a lot of us are not happy about the apartments
Sure.
at all.
Yep, and as I stated before, and as you stated, that's a zoning issue.
Okay.
We're looking at the lot split today.
Is there another meeting that we are going to have about them building that we could oppose?
The next public hearing will be the Planning and Zoning Commission, and that's on March 6th. And just like folks within 300 feet received a letter from us, that'll be the same for the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing. They will be looking at how the site is laid out in terms of architecture and parking and lighting and landscaping and signage. But based upon how the property is zoned, apartments are permitted by right.
Okay.
So at that hearing, it would be a question of not what can the property be used for, but how are we putting apartments on the
So
property?
there'd be no way that we can oppose apartments to go on that way?
The correct way to change the use of a property would be through a rezoning,
Okay.
so, which is not before this board. And I would only say, and follow up to Scott, Scott said, the planning and zoning will hear this for the transportation district, assuming and at such time that this board acts, A, and then is favorable to the applicant. If not, then it doesn't go to planning and zoning, so we'll see how it shakes out, but I just want to answer your question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next I have Henry Householder.
My concerns are the same.
Okay, so Mr. Householder is gonna waive speaking, is that correct? Okay. Next I have Joyce Matthews. Ms. Matthews. You would be sworn in.
Raise your hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes, I do. Thank you.
Please give your name and address for the record.
My name is Joyce Matthews. My address is 82 Habersack Avenue, and I'm scared to death. In your staff report, which we downloaded, it lists that the properties to the east of this are multifamily residential. I live on lot 121, directly behind this. I am a single-family residential. That whole street is single-family residential behind the north section. I do not want condos back there. I do not want, or I'm sorry, I don't want apartments back there. I think that would adversely affect my property value. And there is a ravine that's it's a dry pond back in there that fills when it's raining. I would like to know, will we be notified in writing of the planning and zoning meeting? Because it's coming up on, you just said March 6th. We tend to not get notification of this kind of thing.
If the application
Is approved?
proceeds from here, then it goes to planning and zoning, and then I would ask staff to address.
And what we do is we're required by the code to notify people within 300 feet by mail of the subject property. So if you're within that 300-foot range, we notify by mail, but if you're
My
beyond that,
property line is right,
so you're within 300 feet, so you should be getting a notification for the Planning and Zoning Commission.
okay. So that was my primary concern, that to the east, there are single-family homes. And we're not pleased with the apartment complex, with the density there and the additional traffic onto Watkins.
Ma'am, and if you'd like to, after the meeting, you could check with Lisa to ensure that you have the correct, mailing address.
I have a post office box.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Can you show it? You're east of the northern part of that parcel, is that correct?
Right there.
Okay. Thank you. Scott, what is south of her property? Is that,
That's the condos,
Here,
that's the condos.
okay.
yeah, Jefferson Meadow Condominium.
Is that the zone the same as,
That's correct.
okay, just so I understand. Okay, do you have anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. I'm sorry, was there any other questions? Okay. All right, I have Ryan Young submitted a request. Welcome, sir, if you'd be sworn in.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Give your name and address for the record.
My name is Ryan Young. My address is 214 Aston Court. So our main concern, I know it's about the splitting the property, but our main concern was the building of the apartment complexes. I know it might be another meeting, but our fear was bringing down the property values. Statistics show that apartments do bring down property values. And not only that, all the families that are in our community in Berrien Ridge. It's a good family-oriented neighborhood, and that was a big concern of ours, is building the apartment complex is going to bring a lot of traffic through that narrow road. It's only a one-way road on both sides. So that part with the apartments is what our concern was, and then was really hoping to build something like a single-family home in that lot, or a group of those, or something that's real nice. But that was just pretty much all I had to say.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Young? Staff?
No, sir.
Thank you, sir. I have a Jana Davis. You'd turn to Ms. Paxton this morning, please.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Please state your name and address for the record.
Davis, I own the property 419 Watkins Road. So it is the property that is directly next to the 60-foot piece of property that they want to decrease in the 90 feet. So I'm directly affected by this. Odd enough. I'm sorry. It's a huge investment to have enough place for me. and it would really hurt the property value that I have in it.
What was
I
the,
bought that place for mother to live.
could you show us on the map where
Yeah.
the property you're showing?
Yeah.
The very top, oh, okay.
Just a single woman who bought a property for her mother to live. And it's gonna ruin it. It's gonna cut right through the property there and it's just gonna look horrible. And it's already zoned 90 feet. I'm opposing variance. I'm very, very concerned. Everything else as well, whatever they said. But this is a big deal to me.
Has the property, the applicant's property been rezoned since you've lived there, or since you've owned that property?
No.
It was zoned, is it, its current zoning prior to you purchasing? Okay. So
So
your opposition is to the 60-foot?
moving it from 90 feet to 60 feet.
Okay. All right. Any questions for Ms. Davis? Anyone? Okay, thank you, ma'am. Scott, when I get done with one of the questions I'm gonna wanna know is, what is the intent of the 90-foot width in the current zoning? We can get back to that, I wanna hear from the other people, but just to give you a heads up.
Appreciate
My
that.
question's gonna be. I have Deborah Gutman. Hope that's correct. Please come forward. Turn to Ms. Paxton and be sworn in, please.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Name and address for the record.
My name is Deborah Gutman, and I live at 5177 Watkins Road in Pataskala.
Okay.
Actually, Harrison Township. I am her neighbor. I live just north, I always have to think of the direction my building lies, of that 60-foot strip. That 60-foot strip right now, and has been forever, a barrier, a buffer between my property and the 3 residences that line on Watkins Road. We've lived at this property since 2005. The boarding kennel was built in 1988, when this was the country, and a good place to put a boarding kennel. I'm speaking tonight to state my objection to the variance. I believe granting the variance and letting the subject development move forward would have a significant negative impact, not only on the value of those homes fronting Watkins and the homes surrounding, but on my property and the viability of my business. I own a boarding kennel. Dogs bark. And over the years, we have tried very hard to make certain that we've been a good neighbor. It hasn't always worked, but the thought of having cars driving up and down that strip all day, all night, and what that's gonna do to the occupants of my business, over 500 of which are Pataskala residents, is gonna have a significant impact on my business. It's important for me that the city of Pataskala understand that a noise violation coming from your granting this variance is on all of us, not just on me. I think granting the variance would be a detriment to public health and safety. Granting the variance and allowing the development to move forward would cause more traffic on a road where it is not safe to pull out of your own driveway. Every night when young people leave my driveway, I say, please look 2 or 3 times before you pull out. And now you're talking about putting another, how many cars coming out just south of us, and that's gonna create even more danger on that road. The variance requirements, as you read off earlier, refer to beneficial use and enabling reasonable use of the property. That strip becoming a driveway is not a reasonable use. She will not enjoy sitting out in her backyard anymore. I will have a problem running my business. My building is not air conditioned. In July, I have to have those doors open. Those dogs have to have fresh air. And when neighbors start complaining because every car that drives by is gonna cause somebody to bark because they think their mom's coming to get them, it's gonna be really problematic for my business. And even to the extent that I'm concerned, it will shut me down. And that's a real concern. 63 years old, I need to retire off that business. The traffic problem is real, and many of you need to spend time on Watkins Road to appreciate that. There are other ways for him to accomplish what he wants to accomplish without getting the variance and starting traffic going down a 60-foot alley, basically. I don't believe that substantial justice will be done in the city of Pataskala allows a driveway or a road to be built adjacent to my property. The only person who's gonna receive justice out of this is the seller, the developer, and maybe the high-end tenants. Those of us that have lived in this area, that have made our way in this community for a number of years, are the ones who are gonna suffer, and there will be an injustice to those of us who are already there. Did I? That's- Do you have any questions?
Your time was up, that was the buzzer.
I'm used to being told to be quiet.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, I'm confused, because it seems like this is not gonna be a thoroughfare, it's just gonna be a single resident driveway?
Not necessarily.
Not
'cause-
necessarily.
It'll still be zoned.
It would still be zoned family.
Just listed overs, not
And, you know, if you
Okay.
look at that line, you know, there's a couple things to really consider about this split in that parcel, okay? Seller of that parcel was the developer of the condos behind it. And there's an unwritten promise to leave those woods there to keep a noise barrier to this kennel that was there when he get that property. If you take all those trees down and put a bunch of units back there, or take all those trees down and put a single-family house back there, we've created a major problem for the community. And there really has to be consideration of that. They talk about the fact that it's only 60 feet, 500 feet back. We're not talking 60 feet, 10 feet back, 12 feet back, 500 feet back. You can't do anything with that strip for 500 feet except drive back and forth on it. So it does not strike me as a reasonable use of that piece of ground. It's been a nice buffer between us and the house since the house was built. The kennel was there first. And to change that to where people are driving back and forth is a real concern.
Okay.
Did I answer, clarify the
Thank you.
question? Yes. Any other questions?
Any other questions? Thank you, ma'am. All right, we have Robert and Beth Sexton. Turn to Mr. Paxton, be sworn in, please.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You state your name and address for the record, sir.
My name is Robert Sexton. I live at 5447 Watkins Road. And if you look at the yellow outline, I am the middle of the three ranches that would be adjacent on two sides to the property we're talking. Yes, that's us. So Beth is not going to testify with me, but she would nod vigorously to agree with everything I said. I have written copy of my testimony.
I'll take it and then we'll give it to Ms. Paxton for the record. Thank you, sir. Oh, we have multiple copies. Here we go. I get two for you.
So, Mr. Chairman, my wife Beth and I are asking this body to reject the request for variance sought by Mr. Heitmeyer. We've lived on the east side of Watkins Road, just north of Broad Street, for more than 10 years now. We were attracted to this location by the surrounding neighborhood of large lots and single-family homes. In fact, when we moved here from Columbus over 10 years ago, we really worked hard to stay away from multifamily housing along the strip, and that's why we chose this area for the really big lots and the really wide frontages and the whole 9 yards. After receiving notice from the city about this hearing, Beth and I drove down Watkins Road. So from Broad Street to Hollow Road, which is a 1.7 mile stretch, the stretch that you see along the road frontage there, if we counted right, there's 63 single-family homes through there, and not one of them has a narrow strip as part of it. We believe very strongly that allowing this kind of variance would affect the character of the neighborhood and diminish property values as well. There are many areas of Pataskala that have multi-family structures, but there are none along that 1.7 mile stretch. There's also none in Barrington Ridge, Jefferson Ridge, or Beechwood Trails, all of which adjoin Watkins Road along the stretch that we're talking about. We cannot even see multifamily properties from our property. So to the south of us, you know, if you were to look across Broad Street, there's a hill that blocks the view of multifamily homes. And as been mentioned before, and on the diagram, you can see the great big woods that blocks the view not only of the condominiums, but also of all the homes behind us. So the only view we have on the back of our property is just our next door neighbors. We have visited with all of our neighbors along Watkins after we got this notice. We've communicated with people across the street in Barrington Ridge, and we simply haven't found anybody who doesn't share the same concern that we have, that allowing this variance is opening the door to hurting our property values and frankly changing the nature of the neighborhood. Some of the properties just to the north of there are farm properties. You know, once we open the door to smaller road frontages, then more properties like this can be built using this as a precedent. I think the woods is something that really, and this isn't in my written testimony, but I just thought of this as we were talking, the woods is something that's really important to the character of our particular property. It serves as a noise buffer and also as a visual buffer. You literally can't see through it to the neighborhood behind. So I think overall the neighborhood would be impacted by this variance negatively, but for sure, the 3 ranch homes, of which ours is the middle, there's no doubt that this would injure our property value, and as such, we would ask that this body reject the variance. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions?
I have no questions.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I have Eric Fawner. Apologize in advance if I mess anybody's name up.
Good.
Sir, if you could turn to Ms. Paxton, be sworn in, please.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony about the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Please give your name and address for the record.
Eric Fawner, 667 Forward Pass. It's in the Beechwood Trails subdivision. I'd like to say that I oppose the variance again, as well as many of the others have said. I realize that this is the lot split, and like everybody else has said before me, that this is gonna create that circumstance that everybody's gonna hang their hat on moving forward for the city of Pataskala. And I'm hoping that we can change the vision for Pataskala, and understanding that this is not only gonna potentially create the current status, is gonna create putting taxes on all our fire and police, as well as our schools, which, as all of you guys know, was very hard to get a school levy passed. So the more people we bring into the city that actually aren't paying taxes to the actual city or to the schools, we're taxing all those systems along with water and waste. So that's really all I have to say.
Okay, any questions? Okay, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Next up, we have Drew Clark.
We're doing the do-si-do here.
Do you swear or affirm this testimony about to give us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. So my name is Drew Clark. I'm at 174 Wintergreen Loop, also in Beechwood Trails. I appreciate the time to address the board. Many of my points have already been made. I am in opposition of the variance, and I realize we're just talking about the variance. I'm also in opposition of multifamily use, and eventually would like to see that that zoning changed. I think it's I think whenever that got zoned, it was bad for the community, but that's not on this board, and it was done a while ago. In addition to what's been said, basically, I think variances, in my mind, in my opinion, are very appropriate when they are good for the community, when they add value to the community around it, the neighbors, and I don't think that granting this variance is good for the community at all. And so under that condition, I would urge you to oppose it. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Clark?
No.
All right,
Thank you, sir. Looks like I have one more form, Tim Barrett.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Name and address for the record, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tim Barry, I live at 575 Richmond Drive in Pataskwa. And on the expanded map, my wife and I own the condo that is furthest east, not the furthest south, but the furthest east, and then south in the corner, which is adjacent. Go up to the over, down, over in that far corner there. I would say that, and certainly testimony has already been offered, but I would just like to affirm, first of all, that the Mid-Ohio Development Corporation certainly has the right to sell that properly, and if that is done, Mr. Heitmeyer certainly has the right to build the high-end condos. I have no question about that. I believe through previous testimony and what I want to affirm is that when you look at the variance requirements, I think you will agree that particularly item D, where the central character of the neighborhood would be substantially altered or adjoining properties would suffer a substantial detriment as a result of the variance, that absolutely would. And then F, whether the variance is granted will be detrimental to the public welfare. Again, I believe absolutely. And then finally, item K, whether the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement would be observed, substantial justice done by granting the variance, and I believe that is not so. Jefferson Meadow condominium primarily is a group of older folks who are used to quiet. There are some younger folks in there. Those trees certainly do serve as a buffer. Occasionally we'll hear the dogs, but it's not too bad, and as you know, we love dogs. I love dogs, but I'm gonna have rotator cuff surgery because of an accident tripping over a dog tether in about a week. But we really appreciate and love the community as we have it, and we would absolutely like it to stay that way, and simply ask that you say no on this variance. Any questions?
Okay, thank you, sir. That is,
Mr. Chairman?
yes, sir.
There were no,
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Pardon?
Yes, Mr.
There
Chairman.
were no additional speaker forms.
Yes, sir.
Uh,
Do you wish to speak?
If it be possible, can I speak?
Absolutely. And in addition, if there's anyone else that wishes to speak, I see the honorable trustee wishes to speak and some others. So what we'll do, I'll start with Mr. Cox since he stood first. And then we'll go around the room. Just raise your hand if you wish, and I'll try to call it in order or whatever. So we'll get everybody.
If possible, can I go last just in case I can address any questions?
You can, it doesn't matter to me.
Okay, I'll go last then.
Okay. Everybody can come up. If there's things that are asked or spoken, you have the right to come back up. So it really doesn't matter what order you go in. If there's somebody who would like to go next. Trustee Van Buren is here. Welcome, sir.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
My name's Mark Van Buren. Do you need my address?
Yes, please.
It's 4832 Keller Road, Hebron, Ohio. My question is, and Scott can probably answer this, that's a county road, Watkins, all the way up through there, correct?
It's city through up to the orange line, so it's a city road
Okay, so the driveway,
out there.
okay, so the driveway on the 60-foot road right-of-way, or right-of-way going back, would that driveway placement have to be approved by Licking County's access management plan?
Yes.
Okay. Then my next concern would be, I'm not sure what that road is probably identified as, but I'm sure it's one of the higher classifications.
Offhand, I don't know.
Okay. My comment or my concern is, since that would have to go through the county for a driveway access plan, if it's within 200 feet or 250 feet of driveways, there may be a problem. They may have to get a variance through Licking County to even be able to use that driveway. Does that make sense?
That does make sense.
Okay, I understand the property zone, and there's not much, and hopefully the developer, when it goes through the process, can listen to the good people in this room and listen to them during the other meetings and kind of work with them, design something that maybe people can be happy with. But to me, if you split that back parcel off, and that back parcel is mainly a big ravine in the back, so it may not even be buildable. So you may be creating a parcel that is landlocked from the point the county may sit there and say, no, we're not gonna grant a variance for an access back to there. I mean, it's just,
It is possible,
Okay.
Although I don't know if they can absolutely deny access to a property,
Well,
but they
my-
can limit it.
sure, my argument would be, they created the problem
Mm-hmm.
by dividing it. The problem isn't there because of a tree fell down or
Right.
a big ravine, a gust of rain took out the driveway. The problem's being created is if that variance is granted, then they're able to split the property. So, that means they'd have to go to Licking County, so does this board want to act one way or another without even knowing that you could get access to that property because you may be landlocking it? Make sense?
It does.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for the trustee? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, who would like to go after Ms. Van Buren? Mr. Van Buren. Sorry, sir. There was a lady coming up, so I said Ms.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Name and address for the record, please.
Jennifer Mock, M-A-U-C-K.
Might not touch the stand, I think
Yes.
bumping the
Stay
stand
away.
is what's tricky.
5475 Watkins Road. I am the southernmost parcel of those 3 parcels there that are in Harrison's Township. We definitely agree with a lot of the things that have been said so far. Just to kind of add, we are definitely changing the culture of the environment right there. We have all the condos in the back are ranch level condos. Our 3 houses are ranch, and I feel like probably the next 5 to 6 houses are ranches as well. So we don't have anything, at least for about a half mile, that goes above 1 floor. So an apartment complex, especially there on the corners of Broad and Watkins, a large 2-story at least building is going to set a different precedence for the neighborhood. Not probably the precedence that we are looking for as Beechwood Trail members. Another concern that I really want to harp on is the congestion and the road there. As the dog kennel mentioned earlier, that's a 2-lane road, one going each direction. That is the feeder road for Jefferson. They have a smaller entrance off Broad, but they do have a pretty big entrance there off of Watkins, and that it is the feeder for pretty much 90% of Beechwood Trails. So we're talking about how many thousands of houses there in Beechwood.
rely on Watkins. If we're adding another 42 units, another at least 80 cars, that's a lot of traffic to be coming off of Broad, up a one-lane road, trying to get into their apartment complex. We're talking about extra school buses, extra utility, just people coming back and forth. That is drastically going to change the traffic pattern. We don't have a turn lane coming out of there. So I know just on a standard day, if I leave at a high traffic time, we are maybe a quarter mile away from the light. I can sometimes not get out of my driveway because traffic is backed up that far. So if we start adding in more cars to that situation without a turn lane, without extra a 4-lane intersection, then we're gonna have a lot of backup, a lot of congestion. I think that might be all that I have. Another concern would be speed concerns. I believe that's a 35-mile-per-hour zone. It used to be 45. Not to stereotype, but apartments tend to go to a younger generation. I drove a lot different when I was younger. We already have concerns with people flying up and down that road. If we start bringing a lot more population, if we start bringing a younger population, we're gonna have a higher risk for excess speed up there. And that's really concerning with kids and school buses and the like. And then I think the last thing is the noise circumstance, just to kind of add in what the dog kennel said. The more people that you have conglomerated in a small area, the volume is going to go up naturally. And those trees are a very nice buffer, but you know, the more people that we put in that area, the more congested it's going to be as far as commotion and noise volume. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Do you swear or affirm testimony about to give us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
My name's Robert Toy. I live at 255 Bluffridge Drive. We're in Barrington Ridge. The young lady who just spoke, she brought up a really good point and made me think something. She's absolutely correct with the dangers and concerns with the road. If it's only 40 units, you definitely have 80 more cars plus. And what we're gonna probably pick up, we have 169 units in Barrington Ridge in that housing development. We will most definitely see people cutting through there, trying to get to our other exit point onto Broad Street, which causes a lot of problems with kids and safety. I've been in the community at Barrington Ridge for over 13 years. We were on Watkins Road for another 12 before that. We were down by the high school itself before a lot of the construction took place and the widening of the road in a sense. And we, at one point, you see about 312 cars come out of the high school. I counted it one day I was home. By the time we moved into Barrington Ridge, that multiplied in terms of the number of cars that were going down Watkins Road. That was a major concern for my wife and I with the safety of our children. Now, as the last lady who spoke again made me think, we're gonna have all these cars cutting through. It's gonna become an issue for us with safety. I know he says only 40 units, and again, good faith, that's what he would do, but he could obviously put more in if he chooses to. And again, we don't know how many people are going to be living in each one of those apartments themselves. It could be a husband and wife with their 16, 18-year-old children they're driving too. So my thing is definitely keep in mind the concerns of the safety with individuals in our neighborhood. That's part of this community that definitely been here, probably some of them longer in Barrington Ridge than I have been. So we just ask you to keep that in mind and keeping our safety and the safety of our children. We do have a lot of little children in our neighborhood that will be affected if more cars are coming through, especially at high speed.
Do you have any questions? Anyone else? Mr. Schilling, are you standing because you want to speak or just take your coat off? Okay. Don't want you to lose your chance.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
My name is Pamela Martino. I live at 251 Needles Drive in Beechwood Trails. I just want to say that I agree with all my neighbors on the split. To me, I feel like, I mean, he says that he could sell it to neighbors and stuff, but honestly, he could do whatever he wants. And to me, being a neighbor, I mean, your property value with the apartments is going to go down. Why would you want to spend more money to keep people from building more multifamily homes? I mean, at that point, you probably wanna sell your home, you're not gonna enjoy it as much anymore. Takes down property values. Also, like she was saying before, the traffic coming onto Watkins, I mean, there's not a turning light there or anything, it's hard to get in, there's already enough traffic with the two new neighborhoods on Watkins. And, I mean, I understand this isn't for the apartments, but I would just oppose the variance. I wouldn't wanna make it any easier to build the apartments and bring down our property value and traffic for our neighbors. I'm a lifetime long resident of Pataskala. I've lived in Beechwood Trails since 2015. I understand it's growing, but at some point enough is enough. Let's have a little nature around this. That's all.
Okay, any questions from Ms. Martin? Thank you, ma'am. Sir? Okay.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that gives the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. My name's Matt Farber. I live at 5382 Watkins Road. I'm just out of sight on the west side of Watkins there, north side of the map. And I just simply wanted to say that, I mean, you said yourself this was the biggest turnout you've ever had. And I think you can see just from the turnout how this will negatively affect the surrounding area. And most of us here oppose the split. We also oppose the apartments, but that's not why we're here. I just wanted to say that I think this is enough to get a point across. And that's it. Thank you.
Go ahead, sir.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony of the gift is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
My name's Larry Gladman, and I live in Barrington Ridge on the first cul-de-sac there. And
What is your address?
207 Aston Court. So
Thank you,
I
sir.
live on that house across the street, right there. Yep. And as Henry can attest, Henry and I moved there 1997. So we've been here a while. Already grew some kids up and sent them to college. But what I don't remember is when the city of Pataskala annexed that section of the southern portion. Is anyone here aware of when that was annexed by the city? Because to my recollection, when I signed the papers for my house, that was still Harrison Township. And I was never notified that the city of Pataskala actually annexed that portion. And also, I was never notified of the zoning change that was made to it. So I guess I'm just trying to acquire some facts because I assumed that it was zoned as it is now. I just don't know when it changed or if it did change or if it was always multi-residential. I know at one time for like 10 years, a church was gonna build on it and they never did. And then they started farming it out and planting soybeans and that was great. But now the next thing we get noticed is, hey, guess what? You got 42 new neighbors coming in. And I'm not so much opposed. I understand when he said he's gonna build some high-end apartments. I'm not so much opposed, and from what I understand, he can do that regardless if he gets the variance or not. But I think what Robert and the other lady spoke to, the amount of traffic at that light, and I know Henry has brought this up several times. We've already asked the township what they're gonna do about the traffic at that light because it's already unreasonable. And that light is also underneath the hill, which is dangerous already for people who aren't familiar with the area. When they bounce over that hill, we have 1 or 2 accidents, pretty major accidents at that intersection every year. I mean, some that I'm afraid to go over. I hear the thump. I'm sitting on my back porch, I hear the thump, and then I'm afraid to go over and look at it. And her dogs probably start barking, and next thing you know, everything's all reared up. So, but anyway, so my questions, I guess my 2 questions were, when did it get annexed? Was it always zoned that way? And who's gonna pay to get 2 extra turn lanes put in there? Because we need them now with the way it is. And as soon as we add more apartments, we're definitely gonna need them. And I know my cul-de-sac is gonna be a turnaround. It already is a turnaround right now, but it's gonna be even more of a turnaround. And like I said, my kids are gone, but there's people I know, Ryan has some young ones, and Katrina has young ones.
if they're playing in that street, you can be surprised by, you can be surprised by how fast people can get up into, just in that court.
I've made
So-
complaints to.
And, yeah, cause it gets out of control, so if we're gonna leave this, the only thing I can ask is Barrington Ridge, we're gonna have to put some speed bumps in, like big ones, that's gonna, make your, struts get knocked loose, because if they start cutting through there, that's the only thing that's gonna deter them, because people do it already, so.
I'll even zoom by buses.
Right, so HOA, let's double our fees, because we're gonna have to, put in some speed bumps. Big time. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, sir. Anyone else?
I'm sorry.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, thanks.
Thank you.
Sam Rita, 469 Winridge Drive. I'm over in Barrington Ridge.
And your name?
Sam Rita. Been there since 1995. Was the first HOA president of Barrington Ridge. Designed the bylaws for the neighborhood. We want to just keep it. The goal was to keep it the way that it is now. It's going to change. This isn't the decision making that's going to prevent that change. That's going to happen in another meeting. But if we put a stop to this variance now, it sends a message. That's all I'm asking. We worked hard to keep the community the way it is. Somebody else that spoke was the HOA president before me, or after me, and he'd been there for a long time. And that's our goals, is to keep it the way that it is. We're not trying to change it. We feel that the change would happen with this. A denial now is small, the next meeting is big. That's all I have.
Thanks, sir. You submitted a form, I believe, right?
Henry Householder?
Yeah.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Address, sir?
I live at 211 Aston Court on Barrington Neighbor.
Okay.
I just wanted to reaffirm what Larry said, but I also want to say, are you aware that there's not an arrow on that light, and you go to that light in the afternoon or in the morning? If you're making a left turn up Watkins Road, you're only gonna get one car through there, and then you gotta wait till it changes and hope somebody don't come flying up there and hit you. So, when they're talking about the traffic, it's serious, and it's serious right now. That's all I have.
Okay.
Thanks, Henry.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Hi, Nicole Walker, 4095 Watkins Road. I'm losing my voice. I know this is just a variance meeting, so for the splitting, and I just had a question to like clarification kind of thing. You said that it's all zoned for multifamily, both the north and the south. So if they are able to sell the north, it stays zoned multifamily?
That is correct.
To the point of some of the other comments of if this is going to happen, that he said that he would like to maybe offer it to properties that are surrounding that or attached to that, which I appreciate that thought process, but at the point that was made, they're not gonna be probably so apt to spend more money and add to their property taxes and everything if they're gonna feel their property value is going down by the adding of the apartments that could still, that's definitely his plan for the southern lot, but also in dividing it up, that the northern lot is still gonna be zoned for multifamily, and there's nothing to say that whoever does buy that, cause obviously none of us know, but more than likely the residents aren't gonna wanna buy that because they're already concerned that it's gonna be maybe another developer that would come in and wanna put in, I don't know how many could fit on it, if it'd be 20 or more or whatever, that would be more apartments, and I also have the concerns of, like that's been said, the traffic, it's crazy. And like, I think that's another thing that has to be addressed at another time, because that's not what we're here about, but it is definitely a concern that we'd be adding all of those vehicles and the potential of even more than just the 40 that he would be adding on the southern lot.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else?
Can I have a little bit of what I,
Feel free.
you need me to,
What was your name again, I'm sorry?
Tim Barrett.
Thank you.
If my memory serves me right, the reason it is still zoned multifamily is because the Mid-Ohio Development Corporation initially intended to build condominiums all the way over to Watkins Road. For whatever reason, I don't know, economic downturn, 2008, 2009, they did not do that, and obviously have chosen not to do that. That's why they're selling the land. But I think that's simply a point of clarification as to why, and I'm not sure when all that took place. I do know we used to live in Beechwood Trails. I was actually president of the Civic Association there for quite a while. And the traffic problems, our daughters were both involved in an accident before there was even a light there. So I have to concur that that's definitely an ongoing problem, and submit again and, that you would reject this.
Thank you. Can you speak, Scott, to the annexation and the zoning? There was a
I
question.
believe that gentleman was correct, that initially, as part of Jefferson Meadows, it was going to extend into this property here, but that never happened. During the downturn, they stopped development for a while. There was a portion just a few years ago that developed that's right here, and they finished off what they were planning on doing. So then, this remained zone multifamily, but it appears that they have no intention of continuing with the condominium. So I think it was a result of the downturn. In terms of annexation, I have no idea when that would have occurred. It might have been at the time that they were proposing to develop Jefferson Meadows, and typically a lot of times when you annex, you come in with an annexation agreement where you define what the zoning would be should the property be annexed into the city. But this happened well before my tenure with the city, so I could only speculate at this point.
Okay.
It happened approximately 2000, I would say 5 or 6.
The property rezoned?
Yes, it was part of the Kurtz Farm. Mid-Ohio bought it. Boyer Development had owned it, sold it to Mid-Ohio. Mid-Ohio, because we attended meetings in the old town hall basement when Mid-Ohio requested to put the condominiums in there.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishes to speak? Mr. Cox, you stood earlier, sir, okay. Anyone else? Okay.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Name and address?
My name's Aaron Wagenrod. I live at 122 Jefferson Ridge Drive, Pascagoula. Not within the 300-foot range, but got this information through a site called Nextdoor that us neighbors use to stay in contact with each other and help each other out. And so I just want to make sure that my name is on the record as saying that I oppose this. I support all my other neighbors here that are opposing it. And so that's really all I want to do, is just make sure that there's another name added to the list that who opposes it. I don't know if each person needs to come up and do what I'm doing to get their name on the list, or to make more of an impact to be against this. But really, that's all I'm trying to do.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Anyone else? You're more than welcome to add your name to the list. You will be in the official record if you so choose. And if there's ever a court transcript, your name will be on paper. So, sir, if you'd like to come forward.
Do you swear swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Jim Hannis. I live at 586 Hillgill Circle in Pataskala, actually in Beechwood Trails, and it's in Harrison Township. And I'm on the Board of Zoning Appeals in Harrison Township. And I think this is a totally bad idea for traffic, and it's a mess now on Broad Street, it's a mess now on Watkins Road, and it's only gonna get worse. And I'm opposed to this, and the poor people's property values are gonna suffer, and I'm just opposed.
Okay, are there any questions? Anyone else? Mr. Cox, you asked to speak last.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Mr. Chairman. My name is Rick Cox. I live at 141 Trail East Road, Etna Township. Unfortunately, I have an unpopular view of what's going on here. We are working with Mr. Heitmeyer to help lay out the property for his development. Couple things from what I'm hearing, I would just like to make sure that we all know is this is for the lot split, to take it from the 4 acre and a 2 acre parcel generally. He has the option of building the full 6 acres as multifamily development, and without the lot split that's on the table, we would leave the original 4 acre development to extend up, because that property would only be useful to continue the multifamily. A couple things I'd like to say is that buffer between the dog kennel and that first property is not a buffer, it's somebody else's property. 60 feet is a magical number in land development. It's the width of a typical right-of-way in a subdivision. You could put a public road in 60 foot of right-of-way. So that number was, I don't know the history of Mid-Ohio development, but a 60-foot access up there, my guess is because there was supposed to be a road access for maybe a secondary fire or some other access to that road, but that 60 feet is a very important number. You can put a road in 60 feet. Unwritten rules that were mentioned, there are no unwritten rules. I understand realtors say things to people, things like that, but there is no unwritten rule about what that 60 is. It's either zoned or not zoned, and deed restrictions, which we have not seen anything that would be a deed restriction in there, and it is zoned properly for what is being used. Pataskala rezoned that property to multifamily. As long as I've seen zoning maps, it has been for multifamily, and it has been for sale since the downturn and open market purchasing. If you want the buffer of woods or distance between a kennel and a house, that has been available for split. And
That's not true.
so, sorry. Again, if he doesn't get the split, we will leave options open to continue the development for full use of the property. That's on his option. The landlocked that was brought up by Mr. Van Buren, a 60-foot access could be a public street and could come into different, we could put a road in there if allowed by TCOD and engineering. We could run in and do some more units in there that would be separate from the units we're doing because of that 60 feet and be consistent with a multi-use property, all consistent. The church was mentioned. I coincidentally was the engineer firm that did the church. The church was designed on the parcel just south. It was all done and approved by City of Pataskala, and he is correct, it never got built. So that was not on the parcel we're discussing now. The two bottom parcels are commercial, if I read the map correctly.
And last is, this is a multifamily development that was planned for Pataskala. It is no different from a development of Barrington Ridge or the Mid-Ohio condos or the subdivision.
Say that again. Could you repeat that?
I'm gonna tell you all again, the person speaking is to speak. If you wish to speak, you can come back up. Okay, I started out with that in the beginning, so we all need to be respectful. Mr. Cox.
And I'm only saying this, that I'm sure when Barrington Ridge was constructed, there were people in Harrison Township that didn't want it, just the same as people in Barrington Ridge do not want this development. I'm not being disrespectful, I'm just bringing it up to the board that this is a lot split. If we could look at it as a lot split, it is zoned properly for everything we're trying to do, and we will go through all the proper process to get it approved through Pataskala. Thank you. Do you have any questions? I'm sorry.
Questions from Mr. Cox? Can you speak to, how the property is laid out? If the southern parcel, is it only gonna have one access, I guess? If the southern parcel is created and developed, how do you get fire access at 2 points, or is it not required?
I don't have that information exactly, but as of right now, we would have one access, yes.
Okay.
For this, the fire access comes through here, for Jefferson Meadow. So there's the main access, and then the fire access is here.
That's not an everyday normal access, it's
That's
just an
correct, yeah,
emergency?
just
Okay.
about emergency only.
I understand. And have you or your client checked with Licking County, as Trustee Van Buren asked, as far as who, grants access, what the driveway spacings are? Have you looked into that?
All permits will go through normally.
Okay.
We're still in preliminary, certain hurdles you cross to get to certain
Sure.
points.
Okay. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Again, I apologize for being the downer, but thank you.
Is there anybody else that wishes to speak? Yes, ma'am. You've already been sworn in, if you just give us your name again.
Deborah Gutman, 5177 Watkins Road. I just want to clarify, we did request to purchase part of that property several times over the last 14 years that I've lived here. And we were told that there wasn't a desire to sell it. There also wasn't a desire to build anything there that would be an impediment. And that it probably wasn't going to get developed because of the ravine issue coming across. But to say that it's been offered, or it was there, or it was on the open market, it wasn't available to the public to know that it was being sold until a sign went up about 6 months ago.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Tim Barry, 575 Richmond Drive. Just a point of clarification, the plat map shows that Mid-Ohio still owns that section, is that correct?
I think currently, yes.
Correct. Okay. All right, so Mr. Heitmeyer, this development company does not own it yet. Okay, just wanted to make sure that was clear. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? Board members? Staff? Sirs?
Do you swear or affirm, do you swear or affirm that Desiree Judkins is true, tell the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Scott Sims, 465 Winridge Drive. How can they get a variance if they don't own it?
I've got a list of questions I'm gonna go through, and that's one.
And I agree, I don't think the variance should be approved. They don't own the property, why are we even here?
Okay. Any other questions?
No, it's
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Scott, let's just start with that one. Do you wish to address ownership and versus applicant?
Yes, so the property is owned by Mid-Ohio Development. The applicant is Mr. Heitmeyer. On the application, it has a signature for the property owner to sign stating they agree with allowing Mr. Heitmeyer to proceed with the variance. So the property owner is aware and gave his blessing, or their blessing, to allow the variance to proceed. So it's completely legal per the application.
Okay, thank you. As I said, I have a whole host of questions. Let's talk about floodplain on that northern parcel or this ravine. Is that a buildable portion, or do you know?
I don't think there's any floodplain, but I do believe there's some wetlands back there.
Okay. If the property was annexed into Pataskala, and I think Trustee Van Buren makes a good point, I guess I'm wondering who has the jurisdiction of granting access if it's a county road north of your orange line, but the property was annexed in. Generally, when a property's annexed, it's to the center of the roadway.
That's correct.
So, does Pataskala have jurisdiction to grant an access there, or do they go through Lincoln County? Or do we know?
As of right now, I don't know for sure, just because it would be just generally within the city limits, the city grants access. Outside the city limits, it would go through the county.
Okay.
However, I know there's some maintenance agreements and things in place, so I don't wanna speculate with just the typical, because there could be issues with maintenance agreements and things that I'm not aware of.
Okay. Does the TCOD address traffic?
Yes.
The TIS required?
I don't believe so. I think there's a section in the Transportation Corridor Overlay District that says there's an outline of right in, right out, right turn lane, left turn lane that would be required as part that has to be done. So I don't believe the Public Service Director felt that a traffic study is necessary, but they will definitely look at the need for installation of turn lanes. But again, that will happen at Planning Commission.
Okay. Go back to my original question. If the zoning requires a 90-foot wide frontage, what is that for? Is that to accommodate access, or is there, the only question before this board is going from a 90-foot frontage on a road down to 60 foot. That's the only thing we're considering here.
That's correct.
Why is 90 foot required, or what is the downside to going to 60 foot? Or theoretically, would 20 foot work if you could put a driveway? Yeah, I mean, why 90 foot, do we know?
I do not know. There's nothing in the code that indicates why 90 was selected for the minimum frontage width.
Wouldn't that be due to lot size?
Could be. Lot size, possibly?
It could be.
Okay.
There's nothing in the code to indicate why that was selected.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Sir.
I believe one of the answers to that is back in Fairfield County was big on, remember, flag lots. I think it was a thing to avoid having 20 properties get out there and only have 60 feet of frontage.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions from the board? Okay. The difficult thing with an application like this is this board cannot mix use of property versus frontage, setbacks, the things we're allowed to consider. That's the difficult thing here. And that's why I said up front, I say that at every meeting, there's a number of things this board can consider. Zoning and use of a property is not one of them, unless we're looking at a conditional use application, which this is not. We simply have to look at the 60-foot versus 90-foot access. Because the applicant, in reality, could build on the total acreage, assuming cuts trees down and fills a ravine in, or whatever he has to do, theoretically, you can build on the whole thing. So I guess that's why this makes this so difficult. The problems I'm seeing initially, and this is maybe addressed to Scott, I'm a little concerned with the access on the northern parcel. I guess I have a number of things. I would wanna know if the city grants that access and what the spacing requirements are for the driveway, or if Licking County Planning Commission or Licking County Engineer ultimately controlling that right-of-way grants that access.
What about the soil test for building, being able to build on the property? Is that something we need to?
It's not something.
Mr. Chairman.
The other, I will get to you, hold on. The other concern I'll hold off on that.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead. If you wanna come up, I don't want questions from back there because it doesn't get on the record. If you wanna come up, feel free.
If folks can visualize,
Speak in the mic, it helps
Yeah.
her to
if
take
folks
notes.
can visualize, and you won't be able to see it from here, another concern that's coming to mind, see where the point of the arrow is, right there at the road? I don't know how high that is, but it's a good, anybody got a
I'd
guess?
say a good
20 feet.
20 feet?
12, 15, it's really high.
It's really high. So any type of curb cuttage, if you grant to 60 and it's enough to drive down there, no biggie, any curb cuttage is gonna flood those three houses. Because all that, I think, I've been told I'm the second highest property in Licking County. And I can tell you that every piece of rain that hits my property flows down. And it's gonna, you cut that property that belongs to somebody else, that neighbors have maintained for all these years without nobody saying anything. You cut that into a road and you put asphalt, gravel, whatever you put down there, you've created a nice flow. And these folks are gonna be flooded. Because they're way down in that ravine, they're down now from my property. And you put a curb cut in there and you've created a really, I think, substantial drainage problem.
Okay? I'm not my other concern is, and I guess, Scott, this is what I would wanna know, can this board restrict the use of property through the granting of an area variance legally?
Again, I'm not an attorney, but it's my understanding that you couldn't restrict the use of the property, because that would be a zoning matter. So
Mhm.
based upon the zoning district, if it says, apartments, barber shops, McDonald's, whatever it may be, if it says that's permitted, then by right, they have the ability to develop that.
I guess where I'm going is if Mr. Heitmeyer can build, if he splits it, he can build 40 units. If he doesn't split it, I think I've understood that he could build 60 or some additional amount. But I also think I heard him say that the northern parcel he intends to sell off or use it for some sort of single-family purpose. My question is, if this board does nothing and denies it, he can build up to whatever is 60 units and nobody says a thing, other than your TCOD through zoning commission that's not gonna change the use of the property. If the northern parcel, can the northern parcel be restricted to use as one single family house if the split is granted?
To my knowledge, no, because it would allow,
Even if the applicant agreed to it?
if the applicant agreed to it, I guess you could do that, but that would be tough, considering that by right, there's these uses listed. That might be a question for the law director.
Mr. Chairman.
Off the top of my head, I don't know if like you could restrict a future owner.
Could the current owner agree to it though? The variance would apply to both properties, right? 'Cause it affects both.
I would ask the law director.
Yeah, this could be.
I just thought I'd pose the question.
Sure.
The predicament here is the easy thing to do is just to deny it, but it really doesn't do anything for you all because he can build the 40 units by right as it is or more. And you can go to zoning commission for the TCOD meeting, but that's not gonna do you a lot of good. He can still build it. That's not a question of use of property.
It
So,
affects how he uses it and how he accesses it.
but he still has the right to build it.
He
hasn't bought it yet.
He does have the right to build it, but it
I'm not
does
gonna get into that.
significantly affect four property owners. Significantly affects four property owners.
Again, if you wanna speak,
Yeah.
come forward.
It does.
I wanna give everybody a chance to be heard, but I want you to understand too what I'm thinking.
I just have a question.
Okay?
So, from what I hear, he doesn't,
Yes, state your
Pamela
name.
Martino, so he doesn't own the property yet, and my question is, if the parcel split was to be denied, does he still wanna buy the property and build on it? And the part that he wants to sell off, maybe it's not buildable on, so that's why he's trying to sell it off and make money on it, to
Okay.
build.
I will address that for you because Scott addressed it and I'll address it again. An application can be submitted by whoever, and in this case, it sounds like a developer. Doesn't have to be the property owner. If the property owner signs the application, they're giving consent for the application to be filed, which is what happened here.
Right,
So,
but, so if he doesn't own it, does he still wanna buy it if this is denied, if he can't split it, does he wanna buy it?
I have no
So maybe
idea.
it'll stop, no.
yeah,
That's just what I wanted to say.
okay. Anybody else? Name again for the record.
Eric Fauner.
I got it right the first time.
You did. So, I just want you guys to consider, there's a reason the lot split is wanting to happen. You can look, this map is not a very good map. I would encourage you guys to think about maybe even trying to figure out, is the second lot buildable? Because what's gonna end up happening is, you're correct, he can build family, whatever he wants to do there, but I guarantee you, he's only gonna build 40, because the ravine is right there, and he's gonna be into issues spending more money trying to build it up to get his other 20 lots in there. Along with the potential problem of getting fire trucks in there, in and out. Pretty sure you gotta have at least 2 entrances in case there's an accident at the first one, so they can get to the second one if you're having a heart attack. So, that's just something to think about on the lot split side of things. There's a reason he doesn't wanna build on the northern half. So even if the property owners on those pieces wanna buy it, it's gonna be junk property, and it's gonna be left to sit.
Okay,
Okay? Thank you.
anyone else? Yes, sir.
Robert Toy, Bluffridge again. I have a question, maybe you could answer this. Our oldest son is actually buying a home back with Syntax behind Kroger's. And he actually purchased one of the lots because it backs up to Barrington Ridge, but they cannot tear down and add any more homes behind him because of the tree line, because of the endangered bats. And I bring that up because I know we have bats through our neighborhood and whatnot, and I wonder if that's something that they looked into to see if they could tear down that location and continue to build, or they have to not do because of the endangered bats. As silly as it sounds, that was a big buying option that my son was like, hey, we're gonna buy that lot, because now we have all those woods behind us that they're never gonna tear down. So that's something, definitely there's a reason they want that, I agree. And I think there's many options out there. Maybe say, hey, we're not gonna give it to you. You wanna tear it down and add all the money, and maybe you're not gonna do it. Throw the ball in their court, I don't know, but there's definitely a reason they wanna sell it off. And I know Syntex has that situation going on back there. It's a plus for us, being in Barrington Ridge. Now we kinda still have that wooded buffer behind us and the new Syntex homes. So,
Okay.
School districts deal with the same thing.
Mr.
yeah,
Johnson,
the school
you wanna
district,
address
same
the-
thing with their 2 lots.
Okay.
Rick Cox.
The Indiana bat issue is addressed. According to Ohio EPA, there's a certain time you can fell trees. You can't fell them when the bats are nesting or everything else. There is a process that you have to go through to tear down the trees, to take out the trees through the Ohio EPA, which is considered.
September to March or something like that?
Yeah, it's I don't know the exact date. I don't know the exact dates, but yes, there's a process through the EPA where you have to go through.
Okay. So I don't, ownership I don't think is an issue. I think, again, an application can be filed by anybody as long as the owner has given consent, so. I guess I'm going back to the access. I have some concern with the access to the north. If you create a parcel, what kind of position are we putting the county engineer in or public service director?
I have something to say.
Okay,
If
come
you
to
guys,
the mic and give your name, please.
I'm Katrina, so, if you guys do split that off, is it going to be considered a different area now since it is split off, since the majority of the part is, so it's townships, right?
The property is located in the city of Pataskla. If it's split, it'll still be located in the city of Pataskla.
It will
both
still
parcels.
be considered, okay. Cause I didn't know if it was counted as the city of Pataskla because the majority of it was southern.
Gotcha.
Cause that's like right, I mean, literally, if you connect that orange line, it's pretty much going to be on the other side there.
Okay. So at any rate, is there any other information to come before this board? Board members? Mr. Cox? Mr. Heitmeyer? Residents? Staff? Anybody?
No, sir.
Okay. I still pose the question to you, Scott, about the access. I'm a little uneasy about that. I wanna know what the, to that parcel specifically, from the 90 foot to the 60 foot, what is the detriment? What does that, to that 60 foot, I'm not talking detriment to the area. If it's a flag lot issue like was raised, 90 foot does not strike me as a wide lot for multifamily use. I don't know that it's parcel width issue, but I would like to know that. I'd like to know fire access. And I guess, what is the buildable area there? And I'm talking about slopes, floodplain, things like that. Not that we need a survey or anything, I just wanna know what realistically are we talking about. Because I don't see any kind of site plan or something that tells us. So at any rate, those are the questions I don't have answers to. And I don't know if anybody else has concerns with those, but those are mine.
No, I think it's well thought out.
I would also like to know if the applicant agrees, if legally, that there can be a restriction put on the northern parcel if it's granted.
I'll look into that.
That being said, all of you folks came out, gave your testimony, it is on the record, this board has heard it. I am gonna propose that we table this application until the March meeting. It will be taken back up at the March meeting. You are all welcome to come back. Assuming we table it. And then we would like the answers to those questions. If I think of any more, I'll email you.
Okay.
To me, that's the best thing, because I don't feel that I have all the information. There was a lot of good information and questions posed that we don't necessarily have the answers to. I think also to address the ownership, if there is an agreement between Mr. Heitmeyer and the current property owners, whereas he can act on their behalf or sign off or something like that, we need to have that. Okay? I don't think a person simply can walk in and submit an application they can with the owner's consent. I would like to know if there's an agreement there. Or, I guess, let me say it this way, I will verify that legally the application has been submitted, if you could just do that. Okay?
Legally, the application has been submitted.
By Mr. Heitmeyer on behalf of the actual property owner.
Okay.
Okay? Whether that's contact the property owner or something, I just wanna make sure to alleviate
Okay.
any concerns. That being said, any other questions?
I have a question. Date of March meeting?
March 11th, it'll be 28 days from today.
Thank you.
Same time?
It'll be at 6:30. I do not, to my knowledge, notices are not sent out again. Is that correct? They will be sent out again.
So there's two different meetings?
Isn't there a March 6th meeting too?
Said March 6th.
That was planning and zoning.
That's the planning and zoning meeting. That's not this board.
But that won't happen until.
But that can't happen until after this board acts, so there, I can guarantee you.
March 11th.
Now, that's my proposal to table it. Applicant, Mr. Heitmeyer, out of respect for you submitting the application and Mr. Cox, your client, it's pointless for this board to table it if you want to request this board to take action tonight. Would you like for this board to act tonight on the information we've received? Or would you agree, not that you get a technical say, but would you be okay with us tabling it till the March meeting so we can get the additional information we're seeking?
Yeah, I'm okay with that one.
Then I will move to table application, whatever this is, 19-002. Is there a second?
Yes.
Is there discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. McKittrick?
Yes.
Mr. Platt?
Yes.
Ms. Riddick? Yes. Mr. Ashcraft?
Yes.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Okay, somebody please open the door so it cools down. All right, so the time is now 8:46. For the record, we did not move to recess. We simply had a lot of people in the room, and it took a while to clear the room out. So, we will now continue on.
Motion. The table, that was already done.
That's already been done.
We did, yeah, we did that. So thank you.
Moving right along.
So now we have findings of fact. So I will entertain a motion to approve the findings of fact for variance application VA-19-001 as discussed previously in the meeting.
Also moved.
And a motion, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second, is there discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Ashcraft?
Yes.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Platt?
Yes.
Mr. McKittrick?
Yes.
Ms. Riddick? Yes.
Findings of fact are approved. Those are the only findings we have this evening. We'll go to number 7 on the agenda, approval of the minutes. You have before you the organizational meeting minutes for January 8th, as well as the regular meeting minutes. We'll do 2 separate motions. I entertain a motion to approve the January 8th, 2019 organizational meeting minutes.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Riddick? Yes. Mr. Platt?
Yes.
Mr. McKittrick?
Yes.
Mr. Ashcraft?
Yes.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Motion's approved. Is there a motion to approve the January 8th, 2019 regular meeting minutes?
So moved.
And a motion, it's been moved by Mr. Ashcraft. Is there a second?
So moved. Second.
Is there a second? Is there discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. McKittrick?
Yes.
Mr. Platt?
Yes.
Ms. Riddick? Yes. Mr. Ashcraft?
Yes.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Motion's approved. Number 8, other business, discussion of voting procedures and talking with Scott. He wants to follow up further with our legal counsel on that before it comes to the board. Is that correct, Scott?
Yes, sir.
So we'll go to 8B on the agenda, 2019 BZA schedule. I believe Ms. Paxton provided the revised schedule for you in your packet. Do we need any discussion on that or action or anything that way?
No, sir.
Okay. That's for informational purposes only. So, only thing left on the agenda, adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn to the Monday, March 11, 2019
So moved.
meeting?
I'll second.
There's been a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Platt?
Yes.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Ashcraft?
Yes.
Ms. Rotovac?
Yes.
Mr. McKittrick?
Yes.
We are adjourned.